everyone, today I wanted to make a video that I've been thinking about for ages. I want to talk about how to set a price for your book. I don't think that this is an easy thing to do. There's a lot of different aspects to consider. It's something that I worry about, have I set the right price? And I kind of doubt myself a lot. So I thought it would be helpful to share how I make that decision and all the different things that you need to consider. I think this is on my mind because I have got a new book in the works, and so I've been doing my own research and starting to make a decision about the price point that I want to set for that book. And I've recently brought a book out, so obviously I've been through the process there. But also, I see people a lot in the Facebook groups that I'm in talking about, what price would you set for this kind of book, or I'm thinking about this price, what do you think? Does that sound about right? I've done the same thing myself and asked, what do you think? I don't know, I'm not sure. But I also see people saying, I thought I'd come up with a price, and then I've just run all my numbers, or I've put the price into a royalty calculator, and is this all the royalty I'm going to make? And, should I charge more? And I don't know what to do. And so I just think that this is a really useful thing to sit and talk about and to discuss what I think about when I'm making this decision myself. So the things I'm going to talk about in this video, I will start with how I do my research. Then I will talk a little bit about kind of managing expectations. Then I want to talk about putting the price on the cover of your book, on the back cover. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about discounting your book. So let's start with research. Now, when I am researching the price that I want to set for my book, I look at other similar books. So for instance, my most recent book was a children's picture book. And so I looked at ones with a similar number of illustrations, with a similar number of pages for the same kind of age range. And I looked at a whole range of authors, ones that are better known, ones that are new, all sorts of different books with a similar kind of feel to mine. And depending on what your book is, you look in a similar genre, look for a similar page, book length, all that kind of stuff. Also look at the different formats that you're planning to release. So I would look at paperback, hardback, ebook, whatever it is that you're thinking of publishing, and get a feel for how all of those things relate to each other, all the different prices. Now, when I do this, I typically look at traditionally published authors mostly. The reason for that is that publishing companies really set the industry standards for pricing, and your customers are going to be used to the prices set by those companies. So if, for example, books like yours are typically priced around $9.99, it might be that you see some for $8.99, some for $9.99, some for $10.99. You know that you need to be somewhere in that area. Otherwise, customers are going to be surprised by the pricing. Now, I do also look at indie authors, but I tend to find there's a bit more variation. I think indie authors sometimes can think, I'm a small business. People like to support small business. They like to support local. They like to support a new creative endeavour. I've got something really original, really niche, and whilst all of that may well be true, for those reasons, sometimes an indie might choose to price a little bit higher because they think that a customer will be more willing to pay it. Like I said, they may well be right. Some indies, I think, underprice themselves and think, oh, I don't know, I'm not as worthy, I guess, as a traditionally published author. I'm not sure about my book, so I'm going to keep my price low. So I just think there's a bit more variation there. The other place where I see a lot of variation is in the pricing for ebooks. Some are priced really low and some are really high, audiobooks similarly actually. And so I think it's a lot harder to decide where your pricing is going to lie for an ebook. But as I say, have a look at different formats of books that are similar to yours, see what they retail for, and then that should give you a rough idea of where your pricing should sit. After that, you then need to have a look at how much each copy of your book costs, and then therefore what royalty you're making per copy. So if you're using a print-on-demand service, they usually have royalty calculators, so you can put in all the information such as how many pages is your book, what kind of paper is it black and white, all the different information, and it will then come out with how much money you're going to make per copy of your book. If you are using Ingram Spark, you're also able to adjust the wholesale discount that's offered to whoever is buying your book, as in which outlet is buying your book. And I believe that that is between 30 and 55%. Now, the higher you set that, so if you set it at 55, that is more attractive to a bookshop because they can buy the book for cheaper and then therefore they're making more profit per book. If you set it lower, so you're closer to the 30%, for some bookshops that then becomes unattractive because they're not making as much money. Obviously, you also need to bear in mind how much profit that then leaves you with at the end of the day, but you can set yourself somewhere within that scale. I personally set that at 40%, but that works for me, that's my decision. But have a look at that if you're using that company, and that will also adjust the royalty. So what you might like to do is try different numbers, see where it comes out, and you then have to factor in your wholesale discount as well, make a decision about that as well as about what price point you're setting. Now, if you are printing your book in bulk, what you'll need to do is think about all the costs such as how much you're paying per book, and then as well any distribution costs. So if you're selling via Amazon, what do they charge? If you're using gardeners, or if you're selling through Waterstones, or you're going to a local bookshop, and have a look at all of the costs associated with that. So you will need to be making a decision about which outlets you'll be using. And then once you've priced all that up, you then know per book what your profit is. Obviously, when you're doing all of this, you do not want to be losing money. It's very important to make sure that you are actually making some royalty at the end of the day. But one thing I did want to say is that some people are very shocked by how low the royalty is, especially when you spent so much time writing your book and publishing your book and all of the heart that goes into this process. It can be a little bit of a shock. And I think I was saying I was going to talk about managing expectations a bit, so that's where this is coming in really. If you were a traditionally published author, you would make a really small royalty per book. Typically, independent or self-published authors make a much higher royalty per book. So a traditionally published author might only be making like 40 pence a book, but of course they sell a much higher volume. It's very, very low in particular if they're selling through things like supermarkets where you get those really, really cheap books. The author at the end of that chain is getting very little per book, but as I say, the volume is high, so that's how it works. For an indie author, you will typically be making a lot more than that. You're probably making £1.50 per book or something like that. But some people are very, very shocked by that royalty rate. As I say, when you put so much into it, you expect to make a more of a proportion of the list price of your book. Actually, you make very little at the end of the day. Especially when you think about the fact that I think an indie typically sells, I think it's 200 copies of a book, but I may have that wrong. But I think that's the average. I'll have a look and I'll put it below if that's not right. If you're only selling 200 books and you're making £1 per book, then you get £200. And when you have already spent lots of money on formatting and editing and cover design and all of the stuff, you know, it's obviously it is upsetting. But at the same time, if you inflate your list price so that you make more royalty, although people who really want your book, or your friends and family and people who really want to support you, they may still be willing to pay that higher price, you will become unattractive to the customer, and a lot of people will pass your book up. So it can be very difficult to set your price at the point where you're making an okay royalty, you're not putting anyone off, but you're also not underpricing yourself, because you really need to make some money to recoup what you spent on the book. So all of this is tricky, and I think that's why it can be so anxiety inducing. But I would say manage your expectations a little bit. It can be upsetting to see, oh, my royalty is £1 or whatever it is. But actually, typically you are making a lot more than a traditionally published author. It's just very difficult to get that right, isn't it? Where they're selling so many more and making a lot less, and for you to be able to sell enough at that slightly higher royalty rate to make a profit. It's very hard. So I also wanted to mention here, don't forget ebooks in all of this when you're modelling all of the business side of things. ebooks don't cost an awful lot to produce, and of course you've not got the printing cost and all of that. They also typically have quite a good royalty rate, and people do sell ebooks for quite a high price, really. In my opinion, I tend to be a little bit stingy. But your ebook, I think it's easy to forget when you're thinking, oh, I need to sell, particularly if you're bulk printing, oh, I've got 1,000 copies of this book, so I need to sell 1,000 copies. Well, don't forget your ebook. You may well be making more money per book on your ebook. So get your pricing right there and don't forget to promote that. I will say the ebooks of my children's books are not there so much as a stream of income. I have them on Kindle Unlimited so that people who have Kindle Unlimited can look at those books for free, and that can help them to make a decision about whether they'd like to buy that book in a physical copy. And it's also helpful for generating reviews and running free promotions and stuff. So that's why those ebooks are there. But the ebook of my adult book, Milk, is you know, a significant stream of income and very important. So get your pricing of your ebook right too. Another thing that I wanted to say in all of that is that don't forget that if you are selling books personally, you typically make more money per copy because you're not paying all that distribution stuff. So you're either buying an author copy from a print-on-demand company, or you're buying, you're using your bulk printed books and selling them in person at an event. And although you probably will have paid a table fee and you'll have driven to the event or whatever it is, you do have costs associated to that event. However, you are typically making a lot more money per book than you are if you're going through these distribution channels. Something to bear in mind when you're kind of building that whole business model of how many books you need to sell to make back what you invested on the book. So all of this stuff you need to consider when you're setting your price. It's a lot, it's a lot. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is putting your price on the back of your book. So you've made your decision and you are finishing up, designing everything, and you need to decide whether the price is going on the back cover. Now, this is tricky because if you change your mind, and if you're new to this, you may well think, oh, I'm not sure I set that right. Actually, it's a little bit high, a little bit low, whatever, and I want to change it. If it's printed on the back cover, that becomes more challenging. If it's not printed on there, then it's just a metadata change, really. That said, for a customer, it's really great to be able to pick a book up, particularly in a shop, pick it up, how much is that? Yes, I want it, or no, I don't. If they're coming up to you in person at a book signing type event, then they can ask you. But for some people, they don't like asking, and that also might make a customer walk away. So I would say, again, it's a tricky one to weigh up the pros and cons. For me, my first book did not have the price printed on the cover because I was really worried. I actually did change the price in the end, only very, very slightly. I changed it by a penny. But yeah, I did change my mind and I didn't have to have my cover redesigned to do that. So for me, that worked out. But that said, have people walked away from my book because they didn't know the price? Maybe, I don't know. And then my second book, Lily the Limpet, didn't have a price on the cover. It now does, now that I've brought out the second edition. And my newest book, Milk and Cookies, does have the price on the back cover because I now feel more confident about setting my price, and so I feel happy to print it on there. With ebook, obviously, you can just change the price. The price isn't on the cover. It's not such an issue. But it is something to consider. And the other thing is not only whether you print the price on there, but also you can have the little mini ISBN. So you have the one, the big one, that's the identifier for your book. But there's an optional mini one that actually gives the price. So when that's scanned at the checkout, it means the price comes up. The price should still come up because it's going to link to your book data. But some people use the little barcode, some people don't. If you're using it, and that has, obviously that's the price barcode, then you need to know what you're setting as your price if you're using that little barcode. So again, you know, I can't say that there's one right way or another. It's up to you, but do consider that. Is it likely you're going to change your list price? And if so, are you going to put the price on the cover? How easy is it for you to change it? If you printed 1,000 copies, it's not easy. And depending on the platform you're using with print on demand, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it isn't. So just something worth considering on top of everything else. Now, the last thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is something I've wanted to discuss for ages, is the idea of discounting your book, because I had sort of a epiphany about it probably about 2 years ago, and I keep wanting to talk about it and couldn't find the right place to put this, but it fits really nicely in this video. So you might want to discount your book, for example, to run a promotion, or you've got lots of copies of a particular book and you want to have less stock, or whatever it might be. Now, the reason that I want to bring this up is that I'm talking really mostly about selling in person, actually, but it is relevant to online selling as well. Now, I used to, when I was selling in person, so at craft fairs or author events or whatever it was, I used to always discount my book. So if you met me in person, my book was cheaper than online. Now, the reason that I did that is that in my thinking, if somebody came up to me and they wanted my book, they could see it was on sale, and so they would want to get it today, rather than walking away and thinking, actually, I might buy that online, and then maybe forgetting about it, or going, oh, actually, I didn't really want it that much. And so to me, I thought it's going to make them want to buy this book right now. And even with the discounted price, because these were author copies, I was still making more money than if they bought that online. So I thought that this would be a good way of doing things. It was also a bit about not really believing in myself and thinking they don't know who I am, so they're taking a risk on this book, and one way of pushing them into buying it is me dropping my price. So I would take £1 or £2 off of my price every single time you saw me at an in-person event. And I thought it was great. I thought I was onto something here. And anytime anyone was interested in my book, they always bought it. And so, yeah, I thought this was great. I was then discussing this online with somebody, and that person said, can you really afford to discount your book? And I thought about it, and no, I can't. I run a small business in an industry that has tiny profit margins, and yet I'm discounting my book as standard. And although my thinking kind of made sense, that I don't want somebody to walk away and think, oh, I don't know if I want to buy it, and then decide to buy it online, because they make less money that way. I want them to buy it today. And I also don't want somebody to walk away and then kind of forget about it and never make that purchase. So by discounting it, I guarantee the sale, I am still making more money in person. But on the other hand, that person who is buying from me, they've had a chat with me, the author, I've signed the book, I've given them a bookmark, and yet I'm saying to them, this costs less than if you bought it online. It just seems a bit odd. And the other thing to bear in mind is that if I discount my book by 10%, that's 10% off to the customer, but to me, that's about 30 to 40% off of my profit on the book. And, that's obviously huge for me. That's a massive impact. So no, I can't really afford to do that. I was in two minds about whether I was doing a really clever thing by discounting my books, or whether actually I was doing a really stupid thing, and all these events that I'd done, I had lost out on lots and lots of money that I couldn't afford to lose out on. So I decided to do an experiment, and at my next book sale, I sold all my books at list price, and not a single customer said, oh, that's a bit expensive, or I'm not sure about that. Anyone who showed interest in my book, genuine interest, bought my book. And there wasn't a single person who was upset at the price, which goes to show that I've got my pricing right. And I thought, okay, well then I'll continue to do that. And in all the time I've been selling my books at full price, nobody has felt that they are overpriced. And so yeah, I did miss out on all that money. Now, that's not to say that I will never run a promotion. I do. Periodically, I do take money off of my books. And there can be lots of reasons to do that. It can be an advertising thing to say, oh, for this week, it's cheaper because it's, I don't know, you've written a book about ballet and it's National Ballet Day. I don't know. Or maybe you're discounting your books, like I said, because you've got lots of copies of them and you want to run your stock down a little bit of that one because maybe you've got another book coming in. Whatever your reasoning is, there are good reasons to discount your books, sell off old stock, do some advertising. But to just do it as standard, because I didn't feel that I was really worthy, and was kind of like, oh, you don't know who I am and I really want you to buy this book, so I'm going to make it much cheaper, was just a bad business decision. I could not afford to do that. Even if it was lovely for the customer, I can't afford to do that. So if you are thinking of discounting your book, and you may well want to do that periodically, think about, will the benefit of discounting it, so as in maybe you're going to sell more copies, or maybe you're working your stock down, whatever it is, can you really afford to do it? In real terms, how much money is that taking from your profit? Are you actually still making money? It's definitely something you should think about. And can you afford to do it? And I do think that that's something you need to consider, because I didn't really. So that's everything that I wanted to say about pricing books. Now, if you've got anything that you want to add to everything I've said, please do leave it in the comments. Don't forget to hit like if you found today's video useful, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one. Take care.